Hello everyone, P41 here. Well, I bought more stuff. So you see we have a mini bike here, and then over there we have another mini bike. Because sometimes two is better than one. Now I just picked these up yesterday, and unlike the Bayou 300 I got a while back, which is right there, I bought these for a very specific reason. In October there is a mini bike event which I plan on attending, and I did not have anything that I thought fit the bill properly. So I was on the lookout for mini bikes. These popped up yesterday, so I went and I bought them. Now, they used to be identical Baja Warriors. You can see they're even the same color. Of course, this one's in a much worse state of disrepair. This is one of those deals where the owner claims that they both run and that at least one of them drives. And then you get there and you find out that there's no gas in either of them, and they haven't run for at least a month. This one for 3 months, or at least that's what he claims, and then the gas tank is full of rust. So, you know, it's one of those deals. This one is definitely the better of the two. Now, they do both have seats. I just took them off for the drive home because they weren't really secured very well. Theoretically, according to the guy that I bought this from, all it needs is some gas and it'll run. But we're, of course, missing the cover for the chain. And then this chain is really, really loose, like way too loose. I'm not really sure how it's going to even function that way. Foot pegs are a bit mangled and messed up. Rear tire has a slow leak, missing a bolt in the top. But other than that, this one's in pretty good condition. Oh, also the throttle sticks wide open, so lots of fun there. So this one shouldn't theoretically need too much work to get it going again and riding. This one will need a bit more though. We are missing the tank, which is just decorative. These tanks they don't actually do anything. You see, it's just a piece of metal just flopping around. It's missing that. It's missing the headlight. The twist throttle is gone, and they just kind of jerry-rigged this setup with a brake handle. So this is your throttle now, and of course, just like the other one, this one sticks as well. So you have to push it like this for the throttle to return. And then this isn't even, you know, secured because this is a bicycle handle and this is like an ATV cable. So that's nice. He tells me that he had to repair the pull cord, and I'm like, well, could you find a proper handle, or is all you had a piece of wood? Apparently all he had was a piece of wood. So yeah, I'm not too keen on that. This one also, the air filter housing is all wobbling around. The carburetor isn't actually tight at all. It will definitely need a rear tire. Rear tire is pretty much bald. And for some reason, the front tire, despite being the same size as the other one, is actually smaller. I'm not sure what's up with that. There's a bit of a re-weld that was done at some point right up here, and it's not very good, so I'll probably touch that up. It's missing the chain, the primary chain for this gear reduction, so it'll need one of those to get riding for the time being. I also noticed that the secondary chain is ridiculously tight, and I was wondering why it was so hard to get the airbox cover off on this one when it's not on that one. And what I found is that the engine is so far back that the valve cover is smashing into the frame. And for all I know, there's a hole worn in that valve cover from that. So I think what they did is they broke the chain and they just kept taking links out and shortening it and moving the engine back until it ended up like this. So that definitely can't stay like that. Also got a broken fuel gauge, which will let water in the fuel and cause us tons of nightmares. So yeah, there's oh, and it's also got the loose pegs, though not quite as bad as the other one. So yeah, we got quite a bit of work to do to these. I'm not too concerned about the engines or the drive systems because I do have some modifications in mind for these, but for now I'm just going to focus on getting them running and riding because I'd like to take them out the way they are and just see how they do, and then decide from there what I want to do. So I'm going to focus on this one first because it's the one that's in worse condition. Get this one running. So first thing, I guess we'll check the oil. And yeah, could have seen that coming. There's nothing on the stick. Okay, So we'll fill it up with oil, put some gas in it, see what happens. So I added some oil to it, put some gas in, tighten the carburetor so it's not flopping around. We'll see if this guy was telling the truth or not. Yeah, so much for that. Okay, let's try this again. A little prime. Junk in there. I don't think it's gonna idle. Well, the idle is just set poorly. Yeah, the idle isn't set right. We got liquid leaking out somewhere. I think the liquid is gas. But it runs. That don't look right. So the tank doesn't seem to be leaking from the fitting, and it's not leaking constantly, so I don't think it's a rust hole. It's leaking from between this piece, this metal casing. There's this little protective metal casing, it's what my fingers are touching, around the bottom of the fuel tank. It's leaking between that and the fuel tank itself, so I think what's happening is the seam right around here where it's crimped, I think that's leaking, and then the fuel is running down to the bottom. Fortunately, there's not really a cost-effective, easy way for me to fix that, so I think this tank might be a total loss, but not really a big deal. Well, I knew there was rust in the tank. I didn't know there was that much. All that just came out of the tank, and that's not even all of it. Yeah, I don't think we're going to be able to save this tank. So this is the primary chain that came with it. The previous owner claimed that it just needed a master link, but even without the tensioner on, you see it's still too short. The master link won't fit through there because this is clearly damaged. So that's not going to work anyway. So I did some digging. I managed to find this number 40 chain, which seems to fit perfectly. But I don't have a master link for it. So I'm going to do something a little bit different. So this is the part of the link that I cut off. Pop that back in there. Now we got the second piece of the link. That on there. So it didn't come out quite as well as I'd hoped, but this is something I'd never do on anything I'd actually care about. But I'm not really too worried about it. This is just so that I can test ride it around and see how it does. In the unlikely event that we end up keeping this setup, I'm probably going to go with all new chains anyway. So I moved the engine as far forward as I could and lengthened the secondary chain to try to get it where it's supposed to be. Now, even though the engine's as far forward as I can get it, we still don't have quite enough clearance between the valve cover and the frame, although the valve cover is only dented. It's not worn through, so luckily it's not leaking oil or anything. It does look like the previous owner did some booger welding on the engine mounting plate, so I'm not sure if that has something to do with it. But when I went to try to take up this extra slack that I now have in the chain, I realized that the bearing is completely gone over here. So this tire is just kind of flopping around wherever it wants. But I'm still going to try to test ride it. I've got another tank that I found. Stuck that on there just for now, and we have a seat on, so we'll see if she fires up. We can take it for a ride. It's going to be kind of sketchy, but you know, so is a lot of other stuff I've ridden. So what's the verdict? Well, it rides better than I thought it would. Has no problem getting up to speed with me on it. But there's still quite a number of issues. I thought it was going to be ridiculously sketchy with that wheel flopping around back there, but surprisingly it wasn't. Not having any guard on that chain, that was a little bit sketchy, especially since the foot pegs aren't in very good shape. But the big thing is the engine. It's just, the throttle response is just terrible. Right now, it'll only run on half choke. Full choke and it bogs out too much. Choke off and it tends to die. It tends to be kind of an all or nothing thing. It won't go full throttle. It likes mid-range, but it's either mid-range or no throttle at all. Is how it tends to be. I think that's more of how the clutch is grabbing than anything else. But if you try to give it full throttle, that lasts for about a second or two, and then the engine just starts bucking and vibrating like it's going to throw a rod through the block, so I'm not sure what's up with that. But I definitely think we have some carburetor issues, so we'll have to look into that. But overall, I think that's good for now. Let's move on to the next one. Now this one's obviously in much better shape than the other one, so I think the only thing I really need to do is check the oil and just shorten up this primary chain a little bit, because that's clearly too long. Luckily it looks like it's a newer chain and it does have a master link, so that shouldn't be too difficult. So I think we're about ready to go. I shortened up that chain so it's a lot tighter now. There's not really much I can do about that crooked idler because the pivot is just completely worn out, which is why it's crooked like that. I did loosen up the throttle cable so it won't stick wide open and kill me. There's gas in it. Turns out it already had oil. So I think we're about ready to see if she'll start. Fuel on, choke on. Oh, look at that. First pull. This one's looking much better. it'll come as no surprise that this one did a lot better than the last one. Took it around the block several times and I couldn't help myself. I ended up riding it through the river flowing through my backyard right now too. It's not without its flaws though. Number one, it rattles a whole lot, although that's not really surprising because of this. So of course it rattles more. Also the muffler shield is loose. So yeah, no surprise that it rattles more. The other issue is the engine. You notice it's on half choke. That's where it wants to run the best. So we've definitely got some carburetor issues with this one as well. But it doesn't buck and act like it's going to throw a rod through the block when you try to go full throttle, so that's a lot better. The brakes squeal every time I hit them. I guess they're just worn out. We might need some new brake pads there. I don't know if you can hear this, but there's a plug in this tire, which isn't a big deal except that it's leaking, so we'll have to replace that. The foot pegs, that side is fine, but this side is obviously no good. It's really sketchy, especially since there's no guard on that chain, so those will have to be addressed at some point. But overall, this one does pretty well. So that's where we're going to leave off for this video. Subscribe if you'd like to see more, and if you have any questions or comments or concerns, leave them down below.